My daughter-in-law, Laura, would drop off her twin boys every evening, telling me she had to work late at her nursing job. For months, I watched those beautiful babies while she earned overtime. Then my neighbor, Mrs. Reed, sent me a photo that made my blood run cold. There was Laura at the Golden Palace Casino, laughing and throwing dice at the craps table, wearing the same scrubs she claimed to work in. But what she didn't know was that I had been documenting everything. Thanks for joining me today. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. It was a Tuesday evening in October when my world shifted on its axis. The autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves and the promise of winter, but inside my cozy living room, warmth radiated from every corner. I had spent the afternoon preparing for my grandson's arrival, as had become our routine over the past 6 months. Leo and Owen, my precious 8-year-old twins, would be dropped off at exactly 5:30 p.m. by their mother, Laura, who would rush off to what she called her demanding nursing job at Memorial Hospital. I remember standing at my kitchen window, watching for Laura's silver Honda Civic to pull into my driveway. The house felt too quiet without the boys' laughter echoing through the halls. At 67, I had thought my days of active child-rearing were behind me, but these evening visits had become the highlight of my weeks. The boys would burst through my front door like twin tornadoes, their backpacks flying onto my hardwood floors, their sneakers kicked off in opposite directions, and their arms wrapping around my waist in the kind of hugs that made every ache in my aging bones disappear. The silver Honda appeared right on schedule, and I watched Laura step out wearing her familiar navy blue scrubs, a stethoscope draped around her neck like a badge of honor. Even from a distance, I could see the exhaustion written across her face, the way her shoulders sagged with the weight of responsibility. My heart went out to her. Being a single mother was hard enough, but being a working mother in the healthcare field during these challenging times seemed almost impossible. Laura had married my son Samuel 3 years ago, and from the beginning, I had tried to be the mother-in-law I wished I'd had when I was a young woman struggling to balance motherhood and marriage. I opened my doors, my heart, and my schedule to help however I could. When she told me about picking up extra shifts to help with their mounting bills, I didn't hesitate to offer my services as a babysitter. Family helps family, after all. Mama Helen, she would say, using the affectionate name the boys had taught her, I don't know what we'd do without you. These double shifts are killing me, but the overtime pay is exactly what we need right now. She'd kiss my cheek, her perfume mixing with the faint scent of hospital disinfectant that seemed to cling to her clothes. The boys already ate dinner, but they'll probably want a snack around 8. Leo's been having nightmares lately, so he might need extra comfort. Owen finished most of his homework, but he's struggling with his math worksheet. I would nod, memorizing every detail, every instruction. These boys were my world, and ensuring their comfort and happiness during their mother's absence felt like a sacred duty. I had transformed my guest bedroom into a makeshift paradise for them, complete with twin beds covered in superhero comforters, a shelf lined with their favorite books, and a toy chest overflowing with Legos, action figures, and art supplies. Our evenings had developed a beautiful rhythm. After Laura left, we'd settle into homework time at my dining room table, where I'd help Owen with his multiplication tables, while Leo worked on his reading comprehension. Then came dinner, always their favorites like homemade mac and cheese or chicken tenders with honey mustard. Bath time followed, filled with bubble battles and stories about my own childhood that would make them giggle until their sides hurt. Finally, we'd curl up on my sectional sofa for movie time, usually something animated that would have us all laughing until their eyelids grew heavy. Laura would typically return around 11 p.m., looking even more exhausted than when she'd left. "How were they?" she'd ask, gathering their scattered belongings while I gave her a detailed report of their evening. Any problems with homework? Did Leo have any bad dreams? Her questions seemed genuine, filled with the concern of a loving mother who hated missing these precious hours with her children. "They were angels," I'd always respond, because it was true. Leo and Owen were remarkable children. Intelligent, funny, affectionate, and surprisingly well-behaved for 8-year-olds dealing with their mother's demanding schedule. Leo helped Owen with his reading, and Owen shared his dessert with Leo without being asked. "You're raising good boys, Laura." She would smile then, the kind of tired but grateful smile that made me feel useful, needed, important. "Thank you, Mama Helen. Seriously, I couldn't do this without you. Samuel's been working such long hours at the construction site, and these medical shifts are unpredictable. Knowing the boys are here, safe and loved, makes everything bearable." This routine continued seamlessly for months. Tuesday and Thursday evenings became sacred time in my calendar. I would decline dinner invitations, postpone my book club meetings, and reschedule doctor's appointments to ensure I was always available for Leo and Owen. My friends began teasing me about my grandma duties, but I wore that title with pride. At my age, having a clear purpose, a reason to wake up excited every morning, felt like an unexpected gift. But gifts, I was about to learn, sometimes come wrapped in deception. It was a Thursday evening in late October when everything changed. The boys were upstairs getting ready for bed when my phone chimed with a text message. Mrs. Evelyn Reed, my neighbor of 15 years, rarely texted, preferring phone calls for anything important. Curious, I opened the message and felt my world tilt off its axis. "Helen, I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think you need to see something. I was at the Golden Palace Casino tonight with my bridge club, and I saw Laura. She was at the craps table, still wearing her work scrubs. The timestamp on this photo shows 9:47 p.m. Aren't the boys supposed to be with you because she's working?" Below her message was a crystal-clear photograph that made my hands shake. There was Laura, unmistakably Laura, standing at a crowded craps table surrounded by cigarette smoke and flashing lights. Her navy blue scrubs were the same ones she'd worn when dropping off the boys just 4 hours earlier. Her stethoscope was gone, but her hair was still in the same messy bun she'd had when she'd kissed my cheek and rushed off to save lives at Memorial Hospital. But she wasn't saving lives. She was throwing dice, laughing with strangers, and holding what appeared to be a drink in her free hand. The joy on her face was unmistakable, not the exhausted determination of a woman working to support her family, but the exhilarated expression of someone having the time of her life. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My mind raced through every conversation, every explanation, every tired smile Laura had given me over the past 6 months. Had it all been lies? Had I been nothing more than free childcare while she indulged in gambling? The thought made my stomach churn and my heart ache in ways I hadn't experienced since my husband's death 5 years ago. Upstairs, I could hear Leo and Owen giggling as they brushed their teeth, blissfully unaware that their mother wasn't heroically working to provide for them, but was instead throwing away money they desperately needed at a casino 30 minutes from my house. The innocent sound of their laughter mixed with the bitter taste of betrayal rising in my throat. I looked at Mrs. Reed's photo again, zooming in to make absolutely certain it was Laura. There was no doubt. The small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood accident, the way she held her shoulders when she was excited, the silver wedding ring that caught the casino lights. Every detail confirmed what I didn't want to believe. My daughter-in-law had been lying to me for months, using my love for my grandsons as a cover for her gambling habit. But as I sat there in my living room, surrounded by the toys and homework and evidence of the beautiful evenings we'd shared, I realized something that would change everything. Laura had no idea that I had been documenting our routine in my daily journal, saving every text message and keeping detailed records of every time she'd asked for my help. If Laura wanted to play games, she was about to discover that her mother-in-law knew how to play them better. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my reading glasses perched on my nose and my journal spread open before me. What had started as a simple record of my time with Leo and Owen was about to become evidence in a case I never wanted to build. But if Laura thought she could manipulate my love for my grandsons while lying to my face, she had severely underestimated Helen Peterson. My daily journal had been a habit for over 40 years, a practice my late husband Robert used to tease me about. "Helen," he'd say, watching me write before bed, "you document everything like you're preparing for court." I would laugh and tell him it helped me remember the beautiful moments. Now, as I flipped through 6 months of entries about Laura's supposed work schedule, I realized Robert's joke might have been prophetic. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and began creating what I mentally called the Laura file. At the top of the first page, I wrote the date and time of Mrs. Reed's casino photo, October 26th, 9:47 p.m. Below that, I copied Laura's exact words from that evening. "Mama Helen, they called me in for another double shift. The emergency department is swamped and they're offering time and a half for anyone willing to stay past 11. Page by page, I worked backward through my journal, documenting every instance Laura had claimed to be working late. The pattern was staggering. In 6 months, Laura had supposedly worked 63 overtime shifts, always on Tuesday or Thursday evenings, always emergency situations that arose suddenly, always paying premium overtime rates that would help their family's financial situation. But as I cross-referenced these dates with my bank statements, a troubling picture emerged. Samuel, my son, had been asking me for small loans with increasing frequency. $50 here for Leo's school supplies, $100 there for Owen's soccer registration, $200 last month for what he called unexpected medical bills. Each time he seemed embarrassed, almost ashamed to ask his mother for money when his wife was supposedly earning substantial overtime pay. I reached for my phone and scrolled through months of text messages from Samuel. There, buried between photos of the boys and updates about his construction projects, were messages that now took on a sinister meaning. "Mom, I hate to ask, but could you loan us $150? Owen needs new soccer cleats and Leo's birthday is coming up. Laura's check was smaller than expected this month. Hey, Mom, any chance you could help with $200? The car needs repairs, and Laura's overtime hasn't kicked in yet. Mom, I'm embarrassed to ask again, but we're short on the mortgage this month. Laura says the hospital is cutting back on overtime opportunities." Each message felt like a dagger in my heart. My son, proud and hardworking, had been struggling financially while his wife pretended to work overtime, but actually gambled away money they desperately needed. How much had Laura lost at that casino? How many nights had Samuel worried about bills while she threw dice at a craps table? I picked up my landline and dialed Mrs. Reed's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice filled with concern. "Helen, honey, I've been thinking about that photo all night. Please tell me there's some reasonable explanation." "I wish there was, Evelyn, but I've been going through my records, and I think Laura's been lying about working overtime for months. Tell me, how often does your bridge club go to the Golden Palace?" There was a pause before Mrs. Reed answered. "Well, we go every Thursday evening. It's become our little tradition after bridge club ends. We play a few slot machines, have dinner at their buffet, nothing too exciting for a group of old ladies." "Every Thursday evening?" My voice was sharper than I intended. "Yes, for about 4 months now. Helen, you don't think she's been going there regularly, do you?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of realization settle over me. "Evelyn, Laura drops the boys off every Tuesday and Thursday evening for what she claims are emergency overtime shifts. If your bridge club goes every Thursday and you saw her there last night, oh my God, Helen, she's been using you as free babysitting while she gambles. How could she do this to you, to those precious boys?" The pain in Mrs. Reed's voice matched the ache in my heart. These weren't just lies about work schedules. This was a betrayal that put innocent children at risk while exploiting the love of family members who trusted her completely. "Evelyn, I need to ask you a favor, and it might seem strange." "Anything, honey. What do you need?" "Next Thursday, when your bridge club goes to the casino, could you keep an eye out for Laura? If she's there again, could you take more pictures? I need to know how often this is happening." Mrs. Reed's voice became firm, resolved. "Helen, you don't even need to ask. What that girl is doing is wrong on every level. If she's gambling away money while making you watch her children and lying to your son, then she needs to be stopped. I'll take pictures, notes, whatever you need." After hanging up with Mrs. Reed, I sat in my kitchen feeling a mixture of grief and determination. Grief for the trust that had been shattered, for the family harmony that had been built on lies, for my son who had no idea his wife was deceiving all of us, but also determination to protect Leo and Owen from the consequences of their mother's choices and to ensure Samuel learned the truth before Laura's gambling destroyed their family completely. I opened my laptop and began researching the Golden Palace Casino. Their website showed operating hours, gaming options, and even a rewards program for frequent players. According to their information, the craps tables were most active between 8 p.m. and midnight, exactly the time frame when Laura claimed to be working her emergency overtime shifts. Then I did something that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. I called Memorial Hospital. "Memorial Hospital, how may I direct your call?" "Hello, I'm calling to verify employment for Laura Peterson. She's listed as working in your emergency department." "I'll transfer you to Human Resources." My hands shook as I waited for the transfer. Part of me hoped they would confirm Laura's employment, that somehow there was an explanation that didn't involve months of elaborate lies. "Human Resources, this is Janet speaking." "Hi, Janet. I'm calling to verify employment for Laura Peterson. She claims to work in your emergency department as a nurse." There was the sound of typing, then a pause that seemed to last forever. "Ma'am, I'm showing no employee by that name in our system. Are you sure about the name and department?" Laura Peterson, spelled Laura, last name Peterson. She would be a nurse in the emergency department. More typing, a longer pause. "I've checked our current employees and our recent hires going back 2 years. We have no record of anyone by that name working in any capacity at Memorial Hospital." The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the kitchen table. Laura didn't just work somewhere else or have a different job title. She didn't work at Memorial Hospital at all. Every story about emergency shifts, difficult patients, understaffed departments, and overtime opportunities had been completely fabricated. I retrieved the phone with trembling hands. "Thank you for checking. That's all I needed to know." As I hung up, the full scope of Laura's deception hit me like a physical blow. She had created an entire fictional career, complete with detailed stories about coworkers, challenging cases, and hospital policies. She had used my maternal instincts and love for my grandsons to provide free childcare, while she pursued a gambling habit that was apparently serious enough to require elaborate cover stories. But what terrified me most was wondering how much money she had lost. Money that should have gone to Leo and Owen's needs. Money that had forced my son to ask his elderly mother for loans to cover basic family expenses. I looked at my journal, my legal pad, and my phone containing Mrs. Reed's damning photograph. For months, I had been documenting our beautiful evenings together without realizing I was also documenting evidence of systematic deception. Laura had no idea that her methodical mother-in-law kept detailed records of everything, records that would soon reveal the true cost of her lies. It was time to dig deeper. If Laura was gambling away her family's security, I needed to know exactly how much damage she had done and how to protect Leo and Owen from the consequences of their mother's choices. My investigation was just beginning, and Laura Peterson was about to discover that her biggest mistake wasn't the gambling itself. It was underestimating the woman who loved her children more than life itself. Tuesday evening arrived with its familiar rhythm, but everything felt different now that I knew the truth about Laura's lies. When she dropped off Leo and Owen at exactly 5:30 p.m., I studied her face with new eyes, searching for signs of deception in her tired smile and rushed explanations about another emergency at the hospital that didn't exist. "Mama Helen, they called me in again," she said, adjusting her stethoscope with practiced casualness. "A multi-car accident just came in, and they need all hands on deck. I might be later than usual tonight, maybe closer to midnight." I nodded and smiled, playing my part in her elaborate charade while my heart ached for the boys who were about to spend another evening believing their mother was saving lives instead of rolling dice. "Don't worry about the time, Laura. The boys and I will be just fine." As soon as her silver Honda disappeared down my street, I knelt down to help Leo and Owen with their backpacks, but this time I listened to their chatter with investigative ears instead of simply grandmotherly affection. "Grandma Helen," Owen said, struggling with his zipper, "Mom forgot to pack my math homework again. She was rushing around the house looking for her car keys and saying words Dad says she's not supposed to say." "What kind of words?" I asked gently, helping him with the stubborn zipper. Leo giggled and whispered conspiratorially. "She said the S word and the D word, and then she threw her purse at the wall. Dad had to pick up all her stuff." My hands stilled on Owen's backpack. Laura had been agitated before coming here, stressed in a way that didn't match someone calmly preparing for a scheduled work shift. Did she say why she was upset? "She was looking for something in her purse," Owen explained, pulling out his crumpled math worksheet. "She kept saying she needed to find her special card, the one with the Golden Palace on it." The blood in my veins turned to ice. A Golden Palace card. The Golden Palace Casino probably issued player reward cards to frequent customers, cards that Laura apparently needed for her evening activities. "What did this special card look like?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual while my mind raced. "It was shiny and gold," Leo said, settling onto my couch with his reading book. "Mom keeps it in a secret pocket in her purse behind all her other cards. Sometimes she talks to it." "Talks to it?" "Yeah," Owen chimed in, joining his brother on the couch. "She holds it and says things like, 'Come on, baby. Bring Mommy some luck tonight, and tonight's gonna be different. I can feel it.' Dad thinks she's talking to herself, but we know she's talking to the golden card." The pieces of Laura's deception were falling into place with heartbreaking clarity. She had a casino rewards card. She spoke to it like a talisman, and she was clearly investing emotional energy into her gambling that went far beyond casual entertainment. "Boys," I said, settling. Between them on the couch, "When Mom comes home from work, does she ever seem different?" Leo and Owen exchanged a look that seemed far too mature for 8-year-olds. "Sometimes she's really happy," Leo said slowly, "like really, really happy. She'll come home and hug us super tight and say things like, 'Mommy had a good night at work and we're going to be able to afford lots of nice things soon.' But other times," Owen added, his voice dropping to a whisper, "she comes home and goes straight to her room and cries. We can hear her through the door. Dad goes in there and they talk in those quiet, angry voices that grown-ups use when they don't want kids to hear." My heart was breaking for these innocent children who were witnessing the emotional roller coaster of their mother's gambling addiction without understanding what they were seeing. They were interpreting Laura's wins and losses as good days and bad days at a job that didn't exist. What do Mom and Dad talk about during those quiet, angry conversations? Leo shifted uncomfortably. "Dad says things like, 'How could you spend that much?' And 'The boys need new winter coats and we can't keep asking my mother for money.' And Mom says things like, 'It was supposed to work this time and I can win it back and your mother doesn't mind helping family.' The casual mention of my financial assistance hit me like a physical blow. Not only was Laura gambling away money her family needed, but she was also manipulating the situation to make my son feel comfortable, asking me for loans to cover the shortfalls her addiction created. "Owen," I said gently, "you mentioned that Mom forgot to pack your homework. Does that happen often?" Owen nodded sadly. "Almost every Tuesday and Thursday. Mom gets really distracted on those days. Sometimes she forgets to give us dinner before she brings us here, and sometimes she forgets to pick us up from school because she says she lost track of time." "Lost track of time doing what?" "She says she was running errands," Leo explained, "but her errands always make her smell like cigarettes, and she comes home with those little pieces of paper that Dad gets mad about." Casino tickets. Laura was gambling during the day too, not just during her supposed evening work shifts. She was so consumed by her addiction that she was forgetting basic parental responsibilities, like feeding her children and picking them up from school. "What kind of little pieces of paper?" "They have numbers on them," Owen said, reaching into his backpack and pulling out a crumpled slip of paper. I found this one in Mom's car yesterday. She dropped it when she was looking for her phone. I took the paper with trembling hands. It was a casino payout voucher from the Golden Palace dated 3 days ago for $12.50. The small amount suggested Laura had lost much more than she'd won, but what terrified me was the timestamp, 2:30 p.m. on a Monday afternoon when Leo and Owen should have been picked up from school at 3:15. Boys, did Mom pick you up late from school on Monday? They nodded in unison. We had to wait in the office with Miss Amanda Pierce, Leo said. She tried calling Mom's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Mom finally came at almost 4 o'clock and said her car wouldn't start. Another lie to cover another gambling session that took priority over her children's basic needs. I was beginning to understand that Laura's addiction wasn't just affecting her marriage and finances. It was putting Leo and Owen at risk in ways that made my protective instincts surge with unprecedented force. "Grandma Helen," Owen said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart, you can ask me anything." "Is Mom in trouble? Sometimes Dad looks really worried, and he makes phone calls where he uses his quiet, serious voice and says things like, 'I don't know how much longer we can keep this up, and something has to change before the boys get hurt.'" The innocence in Owen's voice contrasted sharply with the mature concern in his question. These children were living in an environment where their father was clearly stressed about their mother's behavior, but they didn't understand why. They were experiencing the emotional fallout of addiction without having the cognitive framework to process what was happening to their family. "Dad's been working extra hours," Leo added, "and he looks tired all the time. He says he's trying to make enough money so Mom doesn't have to work so many night shifts, but then Mom gets mad and says her job is important and she can't just quit." Samuel was working himself to exhaustion trying to compensate for money Laura was gambling away, while Laura used her fictional job as an excuse to continue her destructive behavior. The manipulation went deeper than I had imagined. She was turning Samuel's love for his family into a weapon that enabled her addiction. "Boys, I want you to know that your dad loves you very much, and so do I. Whatever problems the grown-ups are dealing with, it's not your fault, and you're safe here with me." Both boys snuggled closer to me on the couch, and I felt the weight of their trust and innocence pressing against my heart. They deserve stability, honesty, and parents who put their needs above everything else. Laura's gambling wasn't just stealing money from their family, it was stealing their sense of security and forcing them to navigate adult problems with child-sized emotional resources. As we settled into our homework routine, I watched Leo and Owen work on their assignments with the focused determination of children who had learned not to expect consistent help at home. They had adapted to their mother's unreliability by becoming remarkably self-sufficient, a survival skill that no 8-year-old should need to develop. That evening, as I tucked them into the twin beds in my guest room, Owen reached for my hand. "Grandma Helen, do you think Mom really helps sick people at the hospital?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. These innocent children were starting to sense that something didn't add up about their mother's stories, but they lacked the life experience to understand what they were witnessing. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "Well, when Dad gets hurt at his construction job, he comes home with Band-Aids and bruises and stories about fixing things. But Mom never comes home with stories about helping people get better. She just comes home happy or sad, never really helping people tired." Out of the mouths of babes. Owen had identified something I hadn't even consciously noticed. Laura never shared the kind of detailed work stories that healthcare professionals typically bring home. She never mentioned difficult cases, successful treatments, or the emotional rewards of helping patients recover. Her post-work mood seemed entirely dependent on factors that had nothing to do with patient care. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated jobs," I said carefully, "but what matters most is that you boys are loved and taken care of." As I kissed their foreheads and turned off the lights, I realized that Leo and Owen had provided me with a window into the daily reality of living with Laura's addiction. Their innocent observations painted a picture of a mother who was emotionally absent, financially destructive, and increasingly unreliable in her basic parental duties. But they had also shown me something else. My son Samuel was clearly aware that something was seriously wrong. His stress, his extra work hours, his worried phone calls, and his reluctant requests for financial help all suggested that he was struggling to hold his family together while dealing with a problem he might not fully understand. Tomorrow, I would continue building my case against Laura's deception, but tonight, I held two little boys who trusted me to keep them safe in a world where their mother's priorities had become dangerously skewed. They deserved better than living in the shadow of an addiction that was slowly destroying their family's foundation. Laura had no idea that her children were the most honest witnesses to her deception, and their innocent revelations were building an undeniable case against her elaborate lies. The next morning, I found myself doing something I never imagined I'd need to do, building a case against my own daughter-in-law. The casino payout voucher Owen had innocently given me sat on my kitchen table like a piece of incriminating evidence, which I realized was exactly what it was. But if I was going to protect Leo and Owen and help Samuel understand the truth about his wife, I needed more than one crumpled piece of paper and Mrs. Reed's photograph. I picked up my phone and dialed Mrs. Reed's number, knowing she would be having her morning coffee and reading the newspaper, as had been her routine for the 15 years I'd known her. "Helen, honey, I was just thinking about you. How are you holding up after everything we discovered?" "I'm managing, Evelyn, but I need your help with something important. You mentioned that your bridge club goes to the Golden Palace every Thursday. Would it be possible for you to ask some questions while you're there? Discreetly, of course." "What kind of questions, dear?" I took a deep breath, feeling like I was crossing a line from concerned grandmother to amateur detective. "I need to know how often Laura goes there, how much money she typically spends, and whether the staff recognizes her as a regular customer. If she's been gambling away money that should go to Leo and Owen's needs, I need to understand the scope of the problem." Mrs. Reed's voice became firm and determined. "Helen, that woman has been using you to enable her gambling habit while lying to your son and neglecting those precious children. Whatever information you need, I'll get it. But I think I know someone who might be able to help us more directly." "What do you mean?" "My nephew Darius works in casino security at the Golden Palace. He's a good man, very professional, and he's seen what gambling addiction does to families. If Laura is a regular there, he would know about it, and he might be willing to help us understand how serious her problem really is." The idea of involving casino security felt both intimidating and necessary. If Laura had been gambling regularly for months, there would be records, patterns, and evidence that could help me show Samuel the truth about where their money was really going. "Do you think he would be willing to talk to us?" "Let me call him this morning and explain the situation. Darius has 2 young children of his own, and when I tell him about Leo and Owen being affected by this, I'm sure he'll want to help protect them." After hanging up with Mrs. Reed, I spent the morning organizing my evidence. The legal pad I had started the day before was growing into a comprehensive timeline of Laura's deception. I had her fake work schedule, Samuel's loan requests, the boys' innocent revelations about their mother's behavior, and now physical evidence from the casino itself. But as I worked, I kept thinking about something Owen had mentioned. Laura forgetting to pick up the boys from school because she lost track of time. If she was gambling during school hours, there might be other instances where her addiction had interfered with her parental responsibilities in ways that could be documented. I picked up my phone and called Leo and Owen's school, asking to speak with their teacher, Miss Amanda Pierce. As the phone rang, I rehearsed how to ask delicate questions without immediately revealing the family crisis that was unfolding. "Hello, this is Amanda Pierce." "Hello, Miss Pierce. This is Helen Peterson, Leo and Owen Peterson's grandmother. I wanted to check in about how the boys are doing academically and see if there are any concerns I should be aware of." "Oh, Mrs. Peterson, it's so nice to hear from you. Leo and Owen are wonderful students, very bright and well-behaved. I have to say, though, I've been meaning to reach out to their parents about a few attendance-related issues. My heart sank. What kind of issues? Well, over the past few months, there have been several instances where the boys weren't picked up on time after school. We've had to keep them in the office until a parent could arrive, and when we've tried to call their mother, her phone often goes straight to voicemail. Their father usually responds quickly, but he works construction and isn't always available during school hours. I pulled out my legal pad and started taking notes. How many times has this happened? Let me check my records. It looks like Mrs. Peterson has been late for pickup 7 times since the beginning of the school year. The most recent was just this past Monday, when she arrived almost an hour late and seemed very flustered. Monday, the same day Owen had given me the casino payout voucher. Laura had been gambling during the afternoon and lost track of time, leaving her children waiting at school while she chased losses at a craps table. Has Mrs. Peterson given explanations for these delays? Usually she mentions car trouble or unexpected work obligations. But Miss Pierce paused, as if debating whether to share something more. Mrs. Peterson, I probably shouldn't say this, but on a couple of occasions when she finally arrived, she seemed quite agitated, and I noticed an odor of cigarette smoke. Since she works in healthcare, I found it unusual. Laura didn't smoke, but casinos were filled with cigarette smoke that would cling to clothing and hair. Miss Pierce had unknowingly identified another piece of evidence that Laura's late pickups coincided with gambling sessions. Miss Pierce, have you noticed any changes in the boys' behavior or emotional state recently? Actually, yes. Both Leo and Owen have become increasingly anxious about pickup time. They often ask me multiple times during the afternoon whether their mother will be on time, and they seem visibly relieved when she arrives promptly. It's not uncommon for children to worry about these things, but their level of anxiety seems higher than typical. Laura's gambling wasn't just affecting her marriage and finances, it was creating anxiety in her children who were old enough to recognize that their mother's reliability was deteriorating. The emotional damage was spreading through the family like a poison. Is there anything else I should know about the boys' school experience? Well, there have been a few instances where they came to school without proper supplies or forgot important assignments. Again, these things happen with all children, but Leo and Owen used to be extremely well prepared. Their father seems to be compensating by checking their backpacks every morning, but it's clear that their routine at home has become less consistent. After thanking Miss Pierce and hanging up, I added her observations to my growing file. Laura's gambling was creating a cascade of problems. Late school pickups, forgotten supplies, increased anxiety in the children, and additional stress for Samuel, who was trying to manage everything while working extra hours to compensate for money his wife was gambling away. My phone rang, interrupting my documentation. It was Mrs. Reed, and her voice carried an urgency that made my pulse quicken. Helen, I spoke with Darius, and he wants to meet with us this afternoon. He said he can't share specific patron information due to privacy policies. But when I described Laura, he knew exactly who I was talking about. He's very concerned about the situation and wants to help protect those children. What did he say about Laura? He couldn't give me details over the phone, but he did say that what we're dealing with is more serious than we might realize. He wants to meet at the coffee shop on Maple Street at 2 p.m. Helen, his tone suggested that Laura's gambling problem is significant enough to have caught the attention of casino security. The fact that casino security personnel knew Laura by sight was both validating and terrifying. It confirmed that her gambling wasn't occasional entertainment, but a serious habit that had escalated to the point where professional staff were monitoring her behavior. I spent the rest of the morning preparing for the meeting with Darius Reed. I organized my evidence chronologically, highlighting the correlation between Laura's supposed work shifts and her actual casino visits. I documented Samuel's loan requests and their timing relative to Laura's gambling sessions. I recorded the boys' innocent observations about their mother's mood swings and increasing unreliability. But most importantly, I prepared myself mentally for what Darius might reveal about the extent of Laura's gambling losses. If casino security was aware of her as an individual patron, the amounts of money involved were likely substantial enough to threaten her family's financial stability. At 1:45 p.m., I arrived at the coffee shop on Maple Street and found Mrs. Reed already seated at a corner table with a tall, professional-looking black man in his 30s. Darius Reed had kind eyes and the bearing of someone who took his responsibilities seriously. When he stood to shake my hand, his grip was firm, and his expression was compassionate. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I want you to know that I'm here because I've seen too many families destroyed by gambling addiction. When my aunt told me about your grandsons being affected by this situation, I knew I had to help however I could." We settled at the table, and Darius looked around to ensure our conversation would remain private before continuing. "I can't share specific financial information about any patron, but I can tell you that the woman your aunt described has been a regular at our casino for approximately 6 months. She typically arrives on Tuesday and Thursday evenings and occasionally on weekday afternoons. Her behavior and betting patterns are consistent with someone who has developed a serious gambling problem." "What kind of behavior?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I was ready for the answer. "She exhibits what we call chasing behavior, continuing to gamble in an attempt to recover previous losses, often with increasingly desperate betting patterns. She's been observed arguing with dealers, becoming visibly upset when losing, and staying at tables much longer than recreational gamblers typically do. Our staff has noticed her because her emotional reactions are more intense than what we see from casual players." Mrs. Reed reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Helen, this confirms what we suspected. Laura isn't just gambling occasionally. She's addicted." Darius nodded grimly. "Based on her behavior patterns and the amount of time she spends at our facility, I would estimate that she's experiencing significant financial losses. The fact that she's gambling during afternoon hours suggests that her addiction is interfering with her daily responsibilities, which is a serious red flag. Is there any way to estimate how much money she might be losing?" Darius paused, clearly weighing his professional obligations against his desire to help protect Leo and Owen. "I can't give you specific numbers, but I can tell you that someone with her betting patterns and frequency of visits is likely losing hundreds of dollars per week, possibly more during particularly bad streaks." Hundreds of dollars per week. Over 6 months, Laura could have gambled away thousands of dollars that should have gone to her family's needs. Money for the boys' school supplies, clothing, activities, and basic household expenses. No wonder Samuel had been asking me for loans with increasing frequency. "Mr. Reed, is there anything else we should know?" "Yes. Based on what I've observed, Laura's gambling problem is escalating rather than stabilizing. Her visits are becoming more frequent, her sessions are lasting longer, and her emotional reactions are becoming more pronounced. In my experience, this pattern suggests that without intervention, the situation will continue to deteriorate." As we left the coffee shop, I felt the weight of confirmation settling over me. Laura wasn't just lying about working overtime. She was systematically destroying her family's financial security while using me as unwitting childcare so she could pursue her addiction. The evidence was overwhelming, but now I faced the most difficult challenge of all: how to present this information to Samuel in a way that would protect Leo and Owen while giving their family a chance to heal. Darius Reed had given me the final piece of the puzzle I needed to understand the scope of Laura's deception. Now it was time to decide how to use that information to save my grandsons from the devastating consequences of their mother's choices. 2 days after my meeting with Darius Reed, my phone rang at 10:30 a.m. with a call that would add another devastating layer to Laura's web of deception. The caller ID showed Lincoln Elementary School, and my heart immediately jumped with concern for Leo and Owen. "Mrs. Peterson, this is Amanda Pierce calling from Lincoln Elementary. I hope I'm not interrupting your morning, but I need to discuss some concerns regarding Leo and Owen." "Of course, Miss Pierce. Is everything all right? Are the boys hurt?" No, they're perfectly fine physically, but we've had some issues this week that I think you should be aware of, especially since our previous conversation about pickup delays. I'm calling you because, well, frankly, we've been unable to reach their parents about these matters. I settled into my kitchen chair with my notepad ready, sensing that Miss Pierce was about to provide more evidence of Laura's gambling affecting her children's daily lives. What kind of issues are we talking about? Yesterday, Leo came to school without his lunch money for the third time this month, and when I called the number we have on file for Mrs. Peterson, the phone was disconnected. Owen's soccer registration fee was due last Friday, and according to the front office, it still hasn't been paid. Both boys seem embarrassed about these situations, and I can tell they're worried about disappointing you or their father. My hand tightened around the phone. Laura was so consumed by her gambling that she was failing to manage basic financial responsibilities for her children's school needs. Worse, she had apparently let the phone service lapse, cutting off the school's ability to communicate with her about these problems. Miss Pierce, what number do you have on file for Mrs. Peterson? I heard the rustling of papers before she responded. We have 5550847 for her cell phone, but as I mentioned, it's showing as disconnected. We tried calling Mr. Peterson at his work number, but his supervisor said he's on a job site that doesn't allow personal calls during work hours. The disconnected phone explained why Samuel hadn't been able to reach Laura when he needed to, and why the school's attempts to contact her about the boys' needs had failed. She had probably stopped paying the phone bill to free up money for gambling, creating another communication breakdown that affected her entire family. Miss Pierce, can you tell me exactly what Leo and Owen have been missing or lacking at school? Let me get their files. Okay, here's what I've documented over the past month. Leo needed lunch money on October 15th, 22nd, and 29th. We provided free lunch those days, but he was clearly embarrassed about it. Owen's soccer registration fee of $85 was due on October 25th, and he's missed 2 practices because we can't allow unregistered children to participate for insurance reasons. I was furiously taking notes, adding each incident to my growing documentation of Laura's failures. $85 for Owen's soccer registration was exactly the kind of expense that Laura should have been able to handle easily if she was actually earning the overtime money she claimed to make. Instead, my grandson was missing activities he loved because his mother was gambling away money meant for his childhood experiences. Has there been anything else? Yes, actually. Both boys were supposed to go on a field trip to the Science Museum last Wednesday. The permission slip required a $12 fee for transportation and admission, but Laura never returned the form or sent the money. Leo and Owen had to stay in the office while their classmates went to the museum. When I asked them about it, they said their mother forgot to sign the paper. $12. Laura had probably lost more than that in a single hand at the casino, while her children missed an educational opportunity their classmates enjoyed. The image of Leo and Owen sitting in the school office, watching their friends board a bus for an exciting field trip they couldn't afford, made my heart ache with protective fury. Miss Pierce, I need to ask you something that might sound strange, but it's important. Have you noticed any patterns to when these payment issues arise? There was a pause as she apparently considered my question. Actually, now that you mention it, most of these problems seem to surface early in the week. The missed lunch money, the late fees, the forgotten permission slips. They typically become apparent on Mondays or Tuesdays. Monday and Tuesday issues following weekend gambling sessions or Tuesday evening casino visits. Laura was probably depleting whatever money was available for the boys' needs during her gambling binges, leaving her unable to handle basic school expenses in the following days. Miss Pierce, I'm going to ask you to do something that might seem unusual, but it's for the boys' protection. From now on, if Leo or Owen need lunch money, field trip fees, or any other school-related expenses, please call me directly. Here's my number, and I want you to know that I will always ensure they have what they need. Mrs. Peterson, that's very generous of you, but shouldn't we be working with their parents to resolve these payment issues? Under normal circumstances, absolutely. But right now, I'm concerned that the boys are suffering because of communication and financial problems at home that are beyond their control. I don't want Leo and Owen to miss any more opportunities or feel embarrassed about money while the adults figure out how to fix the underlying problems." Miss Pierce's voice softened with understanding. "Mrs. Peterson, I have to tell you that both boys speak about you constantly. They clearly feel very secure and loved when they're with you. Whatever difficulties their family is experiencing, your presence in their lives is providing them with stability they obviously need." After hanging up with Miss Pierce, I sat in my kitchen feeling a mixture of heartbreak and rage. Laura's gambling had now affected every aspect of her children's lives. Their education, their extracurricular activities, their social experiences with classmates, and their emotional well-being. She was stealing not just money from her family, but experiences and opportunities from Leo and Owen during the precious years of their childhood. I picked up my phone and called Samuel's work number, something I rarely did because I knew how demanding his construction job was. But this couldn't wait. "Peterson Construction, this is Mike." "Hello. This is Helen Peterson, Samuel's mother. Is there any way I could speak with him for just a moment? It's about Leo and Owen." "Hold on, Mrs. Peterson. I'll get him to a phone." A few minutes later, Samuel's voice came on the line, and I could hear the concern immediately. "Mom, is everything okay? Are the boys hurt?" "Samuel, the boys are fine, but I just got a call from their school about some concerning issues." "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "Of course. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to tell him would begin the process of revealing his wife's deception. "Samuel, when was the last time you spoke with Laura during the day?" That's a weird question, Mom. I tried calling her yesterday around lunch to ask about Owen's soccer practice, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Same thing happened on Monday. Why? "Samuel, Leo's teacher just told me that the school has been trying to reach Laura about unpaid fees and other issues, but her phone appears to be disconnected. She's missed lunch money for Leo multiple times. Owen's soccer registration is overdue, and both boys missed a field trip because the permission slip and fee weren't submitted." The silence on the other end of the line was long enough that I wondered if we'd been disconnected. When Samuel finally spoke, his voice was strained. "Mom, I gave Laura money for Owen's soccer registration 2 weeks ago, and I specifically asked her to make sure the boys had lunch money every day. I don't understand why these things aren't getting taken care of." The pain in my son's voice was unmistakable. He was working extra hours to provide for his family, trusting his wife to manage their children's basic needs, and slowly discovering that his efforts were being undermined by problems he didn't understand. "Samuel, there's something else. Miss Pierce mentioned that Laura's phone has been disconnected. Did you know about that?" "Disconnected? No, that can't be right. I've been getting her voicemail, which means..." "Oh God, Mom, if her phone's been disconnected for non-payment, that means she's been lying to me about trying to call me back. I thought she was just busy with work." I could hear my son's world starting to crumble as he realized that his wife's communication failures weren't due to busy work schedules, but to more serious problems that were key, affecting their children's daily lives. "Samuel, I think we need to have a serious conversation about what's been happening with Laura. Not over the phone and not when you're at work, but soon." "Mom, you're scaring me. Is Laura okay? Is she having some kind of breakdown?" How do you tell your child that their spouse is living a double life? How do you prepare someone to learn that the person they trusted most has been systematically deceiving them while putting their children at risk? "Samuel, Laura is physically fine, but there are some things about her recent behavior that we need to discuss. Things that are affecting Leo and Owen in ways that can't continue." "What kind of things?" "Things that are better discussed in person when we have privacy and time to talk through everything carefully. Can you come over this evening after Laura picks up the boys?" Another long pause. "Mom, you're really scaring me now. Just tell me, are my children safe?" "Your children are safe when they're with me, and they're safe when they're with you. But Samuel, there are some decisions that need to be made to protect them, and those decisions need to be based on accurate information about what's really been happening. When we hung up, I knew I had just initiated the conversation that would expose Laura's deception and force my family to confront the devastating impact of her gambling addiction. Samuel deserved to know the truth, and Leo and Owen deserved parents who put their needs above everything else. But first, I had a phone call to make to Miss Pierce. My grandsons would never again miss a field trip, go without lunch money, or be excluded from activities because their mother's gambling took priority over their childhood experiences. Whatever Laura had destroyed, I would work to rebuild, starting with ensuring that Leo and Owen knew they were valued, supported, and protected by adults who truly put them first. The school connection had revealed the final piece of evidence I needed. Laura's gambling wasn't just hurting her marriage or depleting their savings. It was stealing opportunities and experiences from two innocent children who deserved so much better than being casualties of their mother's addiction. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of truth hanging over everything. I had arranged for Mrs. Reed to watch Leo and Owen while I drove to the Golden Palace Casino with all my evidence carefully organized in a folder on my passenger seat. Darius Reed met me in the parking lot, his expression grim but determined. Mrs. Peterson, she arrived 30 minutes ago and went straight to the craps table. She's already lost significant money tonight, but she's still playing. Are you ready for this? I nodded, clutching my purse that contained months of documented lies, unpaid school bills, and casino receipts. Those children deserve better than this. It's time Laura faced the truth. We walked through the casino's smoky interior, past rows of slot machines and poker tables, until we reached the craps section. There was Laura, still wearing the navy scrubs she'd worn when dropping off the boys, throwing dice with the desperate intensity Darius had described. Her face was flushed with the artificial excitement of someone chasing losses, completely absorbed in a world that didn't include her children's needs. I approached the table and stood directly across from her. It took several moments before she noticed me, and when she did, the color drained from her face like she'd seen a ghost. "Helen? What are you doing here?" "I'm here to see where Leo and Owen's soccer registration money went," I said calmly, pulling out the school's unpaid invoice, "and their field trip fees and their lunch money." Laura's hands shook as she set down the dice. The other players at the table began to notice the family drama unfolding, some moving away to give us space. "I can explain," she whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. "Explain how you've been lying to my son for months? Explain how you don't actually work at Memorial Hospital? Explain how you've been using me as free babysitting while you gamble away money your children need?" I opened my folder and began laying evidence on the craps table. Copies of her fake work schedules, Samuel's loan requests, the boys' unpaid school bills, and the casino payout voucher Owen had innocently given me. "Laura, I know everything. I know you've been coming here every Tuesday and Thursday for months. I know you've lost hundreds of dollars while your sons went without lunch money. I know your phone was disconnected because you couldn't pay the bill. And I know Samuel has been working extra hours to compensate for money he doesn't know you're throwing away." Laura collapsed onto a nearby stool, her head in her hands. "Helen, I have a problem. I know I have a problem, but I kept thinking I could win it back. I kept thinking the next session would be different." While you were thinking about winning it back, Leo and Owen sat in the school office watching their classmates leave for a field trip they couldn't afford. While you were chasing your losses, your sons worried about disappointing their father when they needed basic school supplies. The conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. It was Samuel. "Mom, I just got home and Laura's car isn't here. The boys are asking where their mother is and I can't reach her. Do you know where she is?" I looked at Laura, who was crying silently into her hands. "Samuel, I'm with Laura right now. We need to have that family meeting we discussed. Can you bring the boys to my house in an hour?" When Samuel arrived at my house with Leo and Owen, his face showed the strain of someone preparing for devastating news. I had asked Mrs. Reed to take the boys to her house for a few hours while the adults talked, ensuring they would be protected from the initial shock of their parents' crisis. Laura sat on my couch looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen her. Samuel took the chair across from her, and I positioned myself between them with my folder of evidence. "Samuel," I began gently, "for the past 6 months, Laura has been telling us she works overtime shifts at Memorial Hospital, but Memorial Hospital has no record of her employment. She's actually been gambling at the Golden Palace Casino every Tuesday and Thursday evening." The silence that followed was deafening. Samuel looked from me to Laura, his expression cycling through disbelief, hurt, and growing anger. "Laura, is this true?" Laura nodded without looking up. "I have a gambling addiction, Samuel. I've been lying to everyone for months. I've lost thousands of dollars, and I've been using your mother as babysitting so I could feed my addiction." "Thousands of dollars." Samuel's voice was barely a whisper. "Laura, we've been asking my mother for loans. I've been working 60-hour weeks. Our children have been going without things they need." Over the next hour, with guidance from Dr. Monica Ellis, a family therapist I had contacted, we developed a plan for Laura's recovery and the family's healing. Laura would enter gambling addiction treatment immediately. Samuel would have primary custody of Leo and Owen during her recovery, and I would establish a college fund for the boys using money I had set aside, ensuring their future wouldn't be compromised by their mother's mistakes. 3 months later, I sat in Judge Teresa Alvarez's courtroom as she formalized the custody arrangement that prioritized Leo and Owen's stability and well-being. Laura was making progress in her treatment program, attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, and slowly rebuilding trust with her family. Samuel had enrolled the boys in new activities, paid off their school debts, and established a structured routine that didn't depend on anyone's deception. Pastor Gregory Vaughn had been counseling our family through the healing process, helping us understand that recovery is possible but requires complete honesty and accountability. 6 months after that devastating Thursday evening at the casino, Leo and Owen were thriving. Their anxiety about Onuita pickup times had disappeared, their school performance had improved, and they had regained the confident joy that every child deserves. Laura's supervised visits were going well, and she was working with Dr. Ellis to understand how her addiction had affected her children. But most importantly, my grandsons now live in a world where the adults around them prioritize their needs, tell them the truth appropriate for their age, and provide the stability that allows children to simply be children. Did you enjoy the story? Tell me what you would have done in their place. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. If you'd like to support my work, please subscribe. Thank you for being here. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.